With the Tucson Roadrunners officially out of the Calder Cup Playoffs, we now ask the question, is it time to say goodbye for hockey in Southern Arizona? We'll discuss on today's Locked On Coyotes.
Your Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Coyotes, your number one daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes and their relocation to Utah as well. So for those Utah fans, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that later. But I'm your host, Robyn and I've got James Mackey joining me back on today's episode. I'm live from the Tucson Arena after the Tucson Roadrunners took another loss, the second loss, and now they are officially out of the Calder Cup Playoffs, getting swept by the Calgary Wranglers, James. This is not the way we expected the Roadrunners season to end.
No, and a really talented team at that. I mean, we kind of expected a heavy run, and it just didn't come to fruition. I listened to the pregame show on 1440, 1450 Fox Sports, and Podvin had really they had a whole new team for this run, and he kind of was right about that. He had guys that he didn't get. The five that were on the ice together almost all night: Doan, Gunther, Unique, Soderstrom, and Kesselring, who weren't here all year. They didn't gel, and they had to try and find that again, and it didn't pan out for them in the end, unfortunately.
It didn't, but they were able to figure a couple things out. They did find out ways to get goals past Dustin Wolf. They got 3 past him. One was a absolute zinger from Dylan Gunther, and 2 rebound goals, which James, you and I we talked about this in the last show. We talked about, and we've been talking about it for a while. Is what's a way to get past Dustin Wolf? It's definitely not shoot up in the air and because he's going to just go right to center mass and catch those things. It's find a way to bounce it off the dude and get the rebound. 2 of the Roadrunners' 3 goals tonight were off the rebound. That was what you wanted to see. The unfortunate part is off those 2 goals, almost immediately where there's at least off the first one as well as the second goal of the night, almost immediately Calgary answered right back and took it and kept the lead.
Yeah, we kind of hammered it home on Wednesday, and I think I'll spend a little bit of time here. I'm not going to take a lot. Bodies to the net was the name of the game. Calgary was really good in that front, and they knew what they were doing. They were winning that fight all night, and it ultimately showed with the fact that Tucson only put up 2 goals. Dylan Gunther's, like you mentioned, his end-to-end coast-to-coast was, absolutely beautiful from outside the neutral zone, through the neutral zone, over the blue line, into the zone, and scoring. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough for Tucson to take Calgary down, and nothing but the best of luck to Wolf and the Wranglers as they continue to move forward in the Calder Cup playoffs.
Yeah, and like we said, this is definitely not the way you wanted to go down, especially knowing that the Roadrunners were a number 2 seed. They were expected to win. Sure, the odds started to go trending more in favor of Calgary once the quote Dustin Wolf effect went into place, but the Roadrunners on paper was still the better team. They had all the talent on there. They just, and like you said at the beginning of the show, they just finding that gel, having essentially a completely new team to work with and find what works. It took some time, and unfortunately, in a first round of a best of 3, that's not the best place to do it.
Yeah, time you don't have, right? Time you don't have to find that connection, that gel. I mean, Doan was absolutely impeccable this year in Tucson. Gunther was impeccable in Tempe with the big club. But at the end of the day, it didn't translate. They both had 7 shots on goal Wednesday, no goals 4 on Wednesday. And then coming into today, Gunther the only one to score. You have a high production line out there. I mean, we saw it at the end of the game. Potvin started to kind of rotate some forwards around. He was looking for anything he could get to try and grab some energy. It just didn't work. Tucson couldn't get it. Calgary was pushing harder. Calgary just kind of wanted it more at the end of the day, and that's what came of it.
Yeah, and I'll also add too, you could see that kind of in the physicality. Calgary was taking advantage of all those opportunities, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier too, of essentially getting under Tucson's skin because of all of that. You saw almost immediately. One of the things, what was one of the things that I said in the last segment? Don't let that frustration get to you when you get on the ice for the first period. What happened? They let that frustration get to them, and there was way too many scrums to start the game.
Yeah, Calgary kind of picked on what they knew that they could get the Roadrunners to bite on, which was the physical game. The physicality after the whistle was fantastic. The physicality between the whistles, it wasn't there tonight for the Roadrunners. And when you get tied up in those scrums, you're burning energy, you're burning daylight, and ultimately you're burning opportunities. You're going to get called for a couple of penalties. I don't know if they did tonight, but from what I can remember, the time they spent in those scrums definitely probably could have been used to try to get their forward group back together, get another conversation going on, or even grab a change, just something that kind of keeps the game flowing in their favor. And ultimately, they didn't end up getting that because they were spending so much time, pushing and shoving in between the whistles.
Yeah. What else on your mind went wrong on this game? Because there's I'm sure you can pick up on a lot of things because in a game that ended in the way it did, and with the high amount of stakes, a million things went wrong.
I mean, let's take a second to look at how Calgary scored. I think it was 2 of their goals tonight. They were in the net, they were in the crease, they were in the zone, they were tight in, they knew what they had to do. They were in Villalta's face. Tucson lost their defensive zone battle all night tonight. They weren't where they needed to be. They didn't have bodies in the right areas. They weren't passing the puck well in their own offensive zone. I noted that they were playing selfishly tonight. They were just trying to get the puck on net instead of taking advantage of open lanes. And when they were passing the puck, there were errant passes, backdoor passes that were out of reach, not able to be put back easily. Again, all things that you have to kind of put together. We're not expecting perfection. We're expecting pro hockey. We didn't get pro hockey tonight. We got a team that was playing from behind after they put up a goal and started to kind of get in their own heads after a while, and it caused problems.
Plus, the continuation of the lack of communication, where you see it, where you see drop passes or whatever, looking for the player who's trailing you, but they're not there, and it goes back into either the neutral zone or to turnover, and leads to almost a coast to coast for Calgary. Those are fundamental things you just cannot let happen in professional hockey.
Yeah, Tucson had really good puck cycling in the offensive zone on the power play tonight. Again, 1 for 5 on the power play, but that stat line doesn't tell the story of what they were able to do. They cycled really well in the offensive zone. They had the puck moving. They were in deep. They were in the right areas. They were in behind the net. It just came to the point where when Calgary would clear the puck, they would kill enough time off that power play clock that Tucson wouldn't get an opportunity. And actually, there was one where Calgary cleared the puck. Tucson gets caught in a change. Calgary scores a goal, increases their lead. I believe that was the 4th goal of the night for the Wranglers. And just a problem. You can't have that happen when you're in a man advantage. You have to take advantage of the man advantage. They didn't do that tonight.
We're going to continue talking about this game. The Tucson Roadrunners swept by the Calgary Wranglers in the first round of the Calder Cup Playoffs. We'll get more thoughts on that, as well as talk about what's coming up next for the Tucson Roadrunners, get our thoughts about Tucson hockey. We'll get to that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessment, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application. Pricing not available for everybody. Need to hire. You need Indeed. Let's continue this conversation on Locked On Coyotes. Robyn Leone and James Mackey from Inside the Rink on Locked On Coyotes. As we talk more about the Roadrunners getting swept by the Calgary Wranglers. Let's get into this a little bit though, James. That I wanted to get to is don't get any of us wrong. This was a good season for the Tucson Roadrunners. One of the best seasons that they've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Most regular season wins. Villalta had 31 this year. He was amazing. Doan, Gunther were offensive powerhouses. I mean, their forward lines were kicking at levels. It felt like this was the year. It felt like this was it. You know, we looked and saw what the Coyotes did the first half before they even called anybody up. It felt like this was the year for the Roadrunners. It didn't pan out that way. Volta kind of, I hate to say it, Volta collapsed in the playoffs. Ultimately, he stood tall when he needed to, but, you know, or stood tall when he could, when he needed to. In those high moments, he just kind of lost his edge a little bit. And it definitely did show. You know, 5 goals against. It's tougher. Tucson was a second game team all season. The second game of the series that they were in, they tended to be better. They weren't better tonight.
And especially when we were talking about a team that had their home ice advantage, the whiteout today, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from what I was hearing, is this was the biggest crowd for a whiteout in for Tucson Roadrunners, you know, playoff history. Like,
yeah.
So even going back to the last time they held the whiteout, the 2 games against the Barracuda and a couple games against the Texas Stars, those had a good, you know, pretty good crowd, but this was the most, and it was loud. The fans were in it, but it still couldn't capitalize with that.
Yeah, 51-43, I think Adrian Denny said the number was on the broadcast, and it shows. I mean, there are a few empty seats then at the TCC, and I think that's a good story to kind of tell, is, you know, that community really supports their team. You sent me the picture. I have the picture of the QR code. You know, keep hockey in Tucson. They want that team next year. They don't want to lose their team. They want to keep it. They know what they have. They know what they're able to have and what can come of it. We could see a Calder Cup come back to Tucson in the next 2 years if they stay. If not, who really knows how that move then affects the players on the team if they have to go to Tempe.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. With you realize how much this means to Tucson, how much this team means to Tucson, how much and how much how much Tucson means to the Roadrunners. You know, I can get more into more of the other bits later, but I do want to touch on this. You know, Steve Potvin was asked in the press conference about, hey, you know, this could be Tucson's last game, like, no, your last game in Tucson. Kind of like, can you get a little bit of a, can you share some of your thoughts about that? And Steve Potvin, head coach, started answering the question for a little bit, and then he stops, kind of looks down for a little bit. I didn't realize what was happening until like afterwards, but you can start seeing, like, getting super glossy-eyed, telling the reporter that asked the question, he's like, I told you not to ask me that question. You could hear he was getting choked up because Steve Potvin has been here for 7 years. He's called this place home. He understands what this Tucson community means, not just to him, but to them.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that we're lucky to have around the organization. I think his story is amazing. I mean, from, again, assistant coach to head honcho is a hell of a ride to take under Jay Verity, who was amazing as a head coach.
He was patient.
Wrong.
He was patient as hell.
Potvin waited to cut his teeth. He cut his teeth as an assistant. He waited to get his job as a head coach, got the job, took the team back to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years with home ice advantage. It's just tough. It's just so tough to leave a place you've called home for 7 years, to leave a place you know so well, to leave an arena you're used to think that you're going to have to say goodbye to Tucson. We don't know if they'll be back. We don't know what Morello has in store for this team next year. We know obviously there's a couple hoops still to jump through, $3 million buyout if that becomes the case, plus all the logistics of moving a franchise from one to the other, but we'll have to see what comes of it. Hopefully it's not a move. Hopefully they stay in Tucson, and we'll be covering Roadrunners hockey in Tucson for the next couple of years.
That very well is the hope, because and I'll say this, as much as I said this as a reporter, I would love to see, I would love to see the Roadrunners, in Mullet, because hey, I live 15 minutes away. I could do that. But then there's the emotional connection with me, James. I mentioned this on the last Coyotes game. I want to mention it again. This here, Tucson Arena, was where I got my career started. I spent the first days of my career right here in Tucson Arena, and how much it means to me is incredible. I spent I spent 6 seasons full time. The last season, kind of, obviously, I moved up here to Phoenix to get closer to moved up to Phoenix to get closer to the Coyotes, to do a lot more of what I do here on the Locked On Coyotes podcast. But I thank what I got in Tucson. I thank the experience that I had here and the fans that I met, the culture that really means so much to this, to the city, to the team. So many memories, and I took a look around the arena, Jans, on my way down to the press conference and my way out of the press conference, just looking around the bowl, and I couldn't help myself getting a little choked up, just realizing, it very was a possibility that this could be the end here. That a huge part of my life is about to change forever.
I definitely relate to that. My career started covering the Coyotes in Glendale, and I remember leaving Gila River Arena. I got in the elevator, and Bob Heathhouse, legendary voice, radio voice of the Coyotes, is in the elevator with me. I remember looking at him, and I remember asking him, "Did you ever think it would come to this?" He kind of looked at me and he goes, "I'm just gonna miss this place like hell." And I will remember that conversation for as long as I live, because it was a moment I shared with him about an arena. I took my time to walk around Gila River after the end of the Coyotes game 2 years ago. I took my time to walk around Mullet. I got to spend some time on the ice in Mullet. It's hard to see these teams leave these communities. It's super hard to think that something else could come, and we didn't think the Coyotes would be moving. We were thinking they'll be here through 2027 in Mullet, then they'll go up north to North Phoenix. Now, if you're Tucson, you're thinking you're going to have your team for as long as they're contracted. Next thing you know, Morello has a plan to move them to Tempe. There's still a bunch of logistical hoops to jump through. Again, I'm not saying anything set in stone. I'm not saying don't count on it. I'm just saying there's still a possibility it doesn't happen. But at the end of the day, you have to prepare for the worst, which in this case is losing the hockey community in Tucson. Which is
kind of like what we're feeling right now, and we'll touch on those logistics and kind of where maybe where we can stand on the probability of it happening. But even think that is a possibility. Even to think that it's a possibility, it's the reason why I get choked up. The reason why Sweet Pot Fan got choked up, because of how much this city means to us. Here's the. I gives you even a little bit more, James, kind of give you an idea. Some of the I know some reporters, I think you're like yourself, when you came down to Tucson, you waited until a little bit after towards the afternoon, got down here mid-afternoon, and didn't really spend much time, got your dinner and got to the arena. I got here, I got down at get down here before noon, get around, see the city. And, immerse myself in the culture again of a city that meant so much to me. I'm not saying I can't come back here. Of course, I can always come back here. But a city that meant so much to me alongside the sport that is near and dear to my heart. I feel like those two combined, they kind of really that's what it rings so much to me. Am I going to come? Am I going to be at Tucson? Of course, I'm going to be down here all the time. This is still home. I spent 7 years here. But
it's tough.
Anyways, we're going to wrap up our show. We're going to talk about, is this really the last of the Roadrunners in Tucson? What has to happen? And is there, what are the possibilities that we can see as this goes down? We'll talk about that right after this.
Okay.
And today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low and not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash mobile hit game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies, and there's so much to do. Play countless dynamic Monopoly boards, Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or on Google Play. All right, James. Season is now over. The Tucson Roadrunners. A huge cloud overhead of a huge question mark. Is this team moving to Tempe? Let's get this straight up. And first and foremost, that is the plan. That is what Morello said he wants to do. It's even been discussed. I've even heard from internal sources. That is what they want to happen. However, there are so many logistical issues, as you mentioned earlier, so many obstacles that could very well keep that from happening. We're talking about the lease buyout, which was probably the least of the concern here. Which is, if Morello really has the money, he can do it. We're talking ASU and ABOR having to get ABOR, by the way, for those that aren't in tune to what it is in Arizona, that is the Arizona border regions. They overlook anything Arizona public education. So University of Arizona, State University, all those, they overlook it all. So they actually have to approve it because it is on ASU. It is ASU's facility. And then, of course, here's something that Brett Farah of Daily Star brought up to me and really made a really good point about it. We're talking that you need a majority of approval from the AHL Board of Governors, not the NHL, but the AHL Board of Governors to allow it to happen, to allow this move to happen. One thing that Brett told me, and I want to get your thought about this, is he's not entirely sure that they'll approve it because 19 of those 32 teams in the American Hockey League are also NHL governors and owners. So, and they're at this point, they're like, we're not going to do Morello any favors by allowing him to move the team. Why vote for it?
It's a toughie. I personally, I'll set my opinions aside here. Professionally, I think that's a fair point. I think what we really need to take advantage of is the ability that we have a local source here with PHNX before their last show tomorrow. We're going to miss them so dearly, but let's take advantage of the fact that we have somebody that has the ability to have those inside conversations. And I mean, Torini said it, I forget where, but he had an interview and he said, we were just focused on the game at Mullet. He said, we love the atmosphere. We love the way it played. It just wasn't up to big league standards. Now, what is that saying when it comes to pro hockey at a minor league level? It's not saying that TCC is up to standard, right? There's obviously a couple things with TCC that they could change if they really wanted to, if they thought they had to be. But TCC has been the home of this team since they moved there. It was 2016, correct? Since they were put in, in Tucson. They've been there since 2016. TCC has been the home. There's been little to no complaints that we've heard of regarding TCC or its facilities. It seems to be a good housing. The community loves it. However, Alex Morello has made enemies in the NHL. Let's keep that in mind, folks. He's been removed from the Board of Governors in the NHL. He's at what I call the kids' table. He's watching the adults talk all this over before he gets his expansive franchise. He has made enemies. He has made enemies in the NHL, and he has to reap the punishments that come with that, which may just so happen that nobody's going to help him make more money. Nobody's going to help him make money in Tempe. They're just going to say, hey, you've already gotten your way once. We're not going to give it to you again. They have to stay in Tucson.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're not going to bail you out again here. Like you have your opportunity. Like, prove to us that you could run this team in Tucson. Maybe that's what they can tell you. To prove to us that you could run this team in Tucson. And not only you can run it, but you can improve on what's going on. You can bring out the fans, sell out the TCC up to, I think, what was it, almost 7,000 people. Like, do what you
give
can.
Us a reason to believe that in 5 years you're ready to do it again.
Yep. It's like, exactly. Prove to us. And then of course, in addition to getting the arena in Phoenix, then we will discuss that reactivation of the Arizona Coyotes.
And that's what I think is the hardest part. Is it's the idea that it's a reactivation of the franchise. 1.0 is gone. Let's just throw it out there. Lee Mayer did a great job of describing that on today's show. The Coyotes 1.0 are gone. The lineage that Winnipeg brought with them to Arizona is now on hold until the Coyotes come back. But it's not the same team. It's not the same organization. None of those stories are still the same. This is a different organization now. The Coyotes are no longer what they were, right? They're now Utah. They're on a clean slate. The players have been there. They seem to love the arena. The atmosphere for the Delta Center when they brought all the players in was amazing. From everything I've seen, from the reports that I've heard, we're living in a different era of the NHL now where there's 32 teams. Not one of them resides within the borders of State 48. And unfortunately, we don't even know if that's going to be the case in 5 years. We don't know if he's going to win the auction on the 27th. We don't know if he's going to get shovels in the ground the next day. We don't know any of this yet. We're going to have to wait and see as time progresses. And I hope you'll have me back on for a show about the auction. If you're still doing it, I would love to do that. But at the end of the day, Morello's got to win that auction. Morello's got to prove that he wants to build on that building. He's got to get the sale finalized, and then he has to start the building as soon as possible. 3.5 years he has to build, have something coming out of the ground. If not, the NHL is going to tell him, "You're SOL, buddy."
Mm-hmm. And that's a huge thing, I feel like on June 27th, you'll have just about every single every single critic of Alex Morello in terms of media attending that auction, making sure and keeping him in check. That's kind of that's always been the point of media, right? Keeping everybody in check. In this case, you're keeping the owner in check because of what the sport has meant to the entire state of Arizona. Is you just don't want that to get just like if he really means what he says, then he will take those actions on June 27th.
And I was talking to the amazing part of the job that I do is my ability to talk to people and hear stories. And someone came through today with a really cool looking Bauer hat in her front windshield. And I looked at her and I said, I was like, "Oh, is that a Bauer hat?" She goes, "Yeah, my son plays hockey." And the first thing that came to my mind was, "Can I ask you a personal question?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you afraid that your house program is going to lose funding now that the team's gone?" And she looked at me and she told me something I was never expecting. She said, "No." She said that based on the community they've built, they think they should still have the support. Hockey's so big. There's so many kids on the ice in Arizona that they're not going anywhere anytime soon. It's just going to be fun to see who the sponsor is technically.
Yeah, plus take a look at what we've heard from Lindsey Fry, right? She as well as other NHL former Coyotes players who are have since retired are building essentially a fund, a nonprofit that is like, we are going to keep the spirit of hockey alive in Arizona. Like, that is what we want to see. That is that was the fear I had, right? And as what you're saying is that it would all shrivel up and die. But there's that support. That's the support that we want to see. And so much props to Lindsey Fry and company for putting that, for being a part of that.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing and phenomenal to see what they bring of it. Just to think of kind of some of our hockey, namesakes, our idols, Leighton Accardo and Matt Schott. First of all, the first two that come to mind, I think personally, huge Coyotes fans. Ultimately, both losing their battle to their respective diseases, but at the end of the day, it's about the community around them, the support they had. Leighton was loved by so many here. Leighton was loved by everybody I know that I've talked to, that I've asked questions about Leighton. All the stories I've heard about her, the day that Schott dropped the puck on Hockey Fights Cancer Night, I was there for that game as media against the Red Wings at Gila River, and the roar of the crowd as he walked out to drop the puck was phenomenal. His banners, there's one just up the street here. his banners at all the rinks, the community rinks, is really cool to see too. It's just tough to think that we don't currently know what the situation is for the next 1 to 5 years, and the next couple of months are going to be super telltale as to what the NHL looks like here in Arizona, and if there's going to be 33 teams or if they're going to stay with 32 and ride Utah out for as long as they can.
All right. Any final thoughts that you want to share before we close things off on today's show?
Something tells me this is not the end of hockey in Tucson. Something tells me that we're going to get another franchise or organization there, even if the Roadrunners move. Something tells me that they won't go to Tempe. I think ultimately something tells me that in this day and age, the sport in this state is far from dead. And I know that I personally am very excited about that. And I know that I have a lot of people I'm close with that have played hockey in this state, and I've loved everything about it. So I think that this is something that we're going to have to kind of weed through in the next 6 to 8 months once the season restarts in October, and we see what it's like in Utah for that team there, and hockey in high school and the house leagues. But at the end of the day, this isn't the end of the NHL in Arizona. This isn't the end of hockey in Arizona. I think the future still remains pretty bright. It's going to be fun to see what comes of the next couple months.
Once again, James Mackey of Inside the Rink. James, where can everybody find you and your work?
Twitter at James_Mackey35, InsideTheRink.com. Click on the Central Division or the Arizona Coyotes. I'm usually the guy that writes on them. I'll be there. My future currently bleak with the Coyotes, obviously covering them. So during the summer, Inside the Diamonds, covering the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Awesome. And for those that enjoyed watching today's episode, don't forget to leave your like, review, comment if you've subscribed if you've yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube, SiriusXM, ad-free on Amazon Music. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on the app formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at @LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. That is ROBYN_LEANO. Interact with us, ask the question you might have, we might answer right back on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Once again, thanks to everyone for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to forever howl on.